Thank you, everybody. Yes.
There you go.
Got it. My screen up there, it looks like it's paused. It looks like the screen is paused, you know, like it says resume share.
Let me see.
Wow.
And
We
yours?
can,
What, are you doing something, Kristen?
I'm just letting people in.
Oh, okay. Maybe unshare and reshare?
unshare and reshare. You'll
Yeah,
reboot.
turn it off, turn it
Yes,
back
I sent
on.
it out to all providers today. You'll have to, that's probably why.
Do you have anything set up where people can share?
There we go.
Let's see, but you'll have to get on my calendar.
There we go. There it is. Okay.
I can't drop down. I can't. Lower my screen. Yes, that's one.
Okay, so we'll get started. Thank you guys for coming to this training today. We're gonna try and make it interactive. We're gonna get a little deep, but we're also gonna keep it concrete. We'll start just by introducing ourselves. So my name is Katie Bachmeyer, and I started a storytelling studio in 2020 called Bachmeyer Press. It's named after my great-grandfather's printing press. And you know, I really got into storytelling when I was young. I don't know how many of you remember VHS camcorders, but I used to have one on my shoulder like every day when I was growing up. We made all kinds of home videos as little kids. I'm the youngest of 5. And we would just be like kind of wild and crazy, you know, making these funny home videos. And I found what I loved about making those wasn't necessarily like the act of doing it, but it was asking my parents to come into the room and hit play on the television and like have them sit and we'd all gather around the TV and watch our home videos back together. And I realized that like there is something magical about being able to share an emotion with somebody else through storytelling. And that really carried through to my college years. I went to school and I was like one of those odd birds that knew exactly what I wanted to do when I was a freshman. I was like documentary filmmaking. So I studied anthropology and film video production. And one of the films we watched during my education really changed the course of my life. It was called Tittaket Follies. And it was a documentary done about institutions in the 1960s. I left that class really struck by these black and white images of people with disabilities whose lives were relegated to this institution. And the maltreatment that they had to go through, these like horrific kind of images of being showered with a fire hose or buried in a sea of unmarked graves. I couldn't believe that was going on in our country ever. Like it just struck me like, how is this America? I was kind of maybe naive to like not have known that. But I was also really struck by the power that these stories have to actually shift the narrative in our country. So it wasn't until images like this started to come out nationally that people started to become aware and this like groundswell of support about deinstitutionalization started to happen. And that left me with this idea that like, I really want to tell stories that stick with people. I want to tell stories that inspire people to make change, make a difference, whatever that is. And I also got really interested in disability inclusion at that time. So when I graduated, I went on and my careers kind of looked like a couple of different things, starting with direct support work. That's what I did right out of college. And then I went on to do a Fulbright scholarship in Macedonia, which is like over in the Balkans above Greece. And there I latched onto this nonprofit that was doing disability inclusion work. And I kind of followed them around the country as they did different presentations and I filmed their story. So when I came home to Cincinnati, I started a career and that's where I met Candace at Starfire. And my role there was to follow their story of transformation from being a day program for people with disabilities to being a more integrated community-based service. And through that time period, I made over 100 documentaries, like short films for them. I ran their marketing and did their outcome collection and really shifted with the support and everything that I learned from Starfire, really shifted the narrative about people with disabilities that was being told there at the time. So I hope to share some of that with you guys today. And like I said, this will be interactive, so we won't just be talking at you the whole time. But I'll let Candace introduce herself before we get started.
So I'm Candace Peelman. I've had the honor of working with Katie both at Starfire and now with Bachmeyer Press for about 13 years now. I started my career in disability services as a special education aide in a private Catholic high school, and really felt like this isn't it. This doesn't make sense that all these kids are in their own separate room, and found myself at Starfire in 2007, where I worked until 2020. As Katie said, we were able to learn a lot together there, and then also kind of shift going from a congregated day program, of which I was a DSP, to really something that is a model for what real life could look like for people. Full inclusion, really cool, rich, involved days and lives full of meaning. I was the executive director there up until 2020, where I shifted, and now I am a director of development for a high school in Cincinnati, where my work is fundraising, but also really being respectful of what is that story we're telling of our students, our alumni, what is our community learning about what we are sharing from a story-based lens. So I'm excited to be here again because I don't get to speak in this world too often since I left in 2020, but still have a lot of passion and knowledge of that. So I'm really honored that Katie invited me here to join you all today.
Yes, and this is actually Candace and I at a storytelling event at Memorial Hall.
We are
so-
storytelling geeks.
Yes.
So. All right, so we want to know just who's in the room here, because Katie and I are not from here, and we only know, I know Pam, I think, from a phone call. I don't know anybody in the room. I think Katie knows a couple other folks. So this quote, I think, is important, both from Katie's work. You heard her speak about her background in anthropology, and I think it's also true. When I've done trainings previously, it often feels like an expert comes in who's not from our town, who doesn't know who we work with, who doesn't know our organization, and they're telling us how to do our job. Katie and I are really firm believers that this quote from Roger Payne, a biologist, is really very true, that any observant local knows much more than the visiting scientist, always, no exception. So we're really interested in who's in the room here today, and then why did you get into this work? And I'm just gonna capture a couple of these bold quotes, just so we can kind of ground ourselves for this. Yes, this is a training. For some of us, maybe it's required, but also there's a deep sense of responsibility when we talk about this work, because we are talking about people's lives. And so there's responsibility that we have to remind ourselves, well, why are we even here? So we can go around the room. I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're right next to me, so take it away.
Hi, I'm Kenny Whiteley. I'm from the Perry County Board of DD. I'm behavior support. And I fell into to social work through just needing a job, getting in there, helping people. I was working some like juvenile mental health and juvenile corrections, and saw where the lack of having a plan set people up to fail. So now 90% of what I do is trying to come up with a better plan.
My name is Laura Johnston. I am with the Fairfield Center for Disabilities and Cerebral Palsy, FCDCP, if you're not wanting such a mouthful. So this is my husband, Aaron, and he worked there.
Oh my gosh.
He's worked there for over 10 years, and they were looking for somebody to kind of take on some of the extra office duties. Since then, I've become the RAMP program coordinator, as well as what you call it, kind of the outreach person. A lot of our online identity is what I help shape. So I'm just really excited to learn more about the positive storytelling as far as sharing what we do online.
I'm Aaron Johnston. I'm the day program manager at the Center for Disabilities. I started out as a driver, and then last year, some position moving around. Kenny said he fell into, I was shoved into. So driver, billing, and then this role came open and, I didn't think I would enjoy it, but now I'm very passionate about it to see that, several of you around the table have been a great help and a leader in the directions that we need to go from where we were, and seeing where we're going has just made a difference, and we have several success stories of individuals who have gone from sitting around the table collaring to coming less and less to the center and staying more in the community with volunteer positions, things like that. So.
Hi, I'm Kyle. Everybody knows me. I've been around a long, long time. I went to Ohio University way back when, I don't know if we had electric back then, but I went there and studied industrial technology.
You're not that old, right?
Seems like it. Thanks, Aaron. And so I was looking for manufacturing kind of work, and my cousin had Down syndrome and always talked about the workshop. I thought, well, that sounds like a place I should go to get a job. And the guy that had just been hired as a production manager had a bunch of social workers trying to do production and saw my degree and said, well, why don't you come and work for us? So I had a great opportunity, and I'm still working to find that manufacturing job that I was looking for in 1988. And here I am.
Hi everyone, my name is Sunny. I work with Learn Never Ends, a day program based in Columbus, Ohio. My primary function is mostly in employment services, but I kind of, I do a lot of everything. I believe that is my primary purpose is to serve people, and so I served students for a while, and I moved on to now serving adults with disabilities. And I believe that is what I'm here for, and so that's.
I feel like I should scoot back, like this room's set up weird. I'm Rachel McCoy. I know almost all of you guys here too. I'm Community Connections Coordinator for the Board of DD. I started at DD in HR. When I was looking to go back to work after I had my boys, I wanted to work at an agency of some kind or for someone that was making a difference in the lives of people. HR doesn't really feel like that does that, so I bumped up to Community Connections, and I work with providers and with ISCs and with getting people into the community more and finding what they're passionate about and giving them those opportunities. That's way better fit for me than HR was, so I'm happy to be here and learning all the new things.
Hi, I'm Christy. I work for the county board. I'm an individual budget liaison. My title changes all the time, it seems like. Right now, my primary role is working on budgets for the people that we serve, finding the best way to authorize and kind of coordinate, figure out the best way to use Medicaid and funds for the people that we serve. I kind of feel like I fell into this role. I've been here about 14 years, walked in the door as a part-time file phone clerk and have been many, many roles since then. But I kind of feel like my passion is to serve people and help people. And right now I feel like I'm kind of in the right role to do that.
And you still liaison, because I used to work with Christy a long time ago and she won't let me go. She's really good. She's really good at keeping people together no matter where you move to. And I'm Lisa. I'm with THS for Medical Services. Kenny, I didn't recognize you. You look familiar. I don't even honestly know how I fell into this field. It was accidental in 2005 maybe. I was trying to find myself and I applied everywhere, and then I got hired at a state program. I'm like, I don't even know what this is, but let's try it out. And then it honestly formed the trajectory of my life and really gave me purpose. And I really realized the DD world was where I needed to be. So I got my master's specifically to keep moving around. I was a behavior specialist for about 9 years and loved every second of it and miss it every day. But now I do remote supports, and it's great because it really helps people find their autonomy and independence in a way that years ago we really, you know, you had staff or you had alone time. There was like really no way to like help, so most people went with staff. It's safer, it's better. And so remote supports is cool because it really helps people have that autonomy but still have that safety and somebody to reach out to, so that's where I'm at.
I'm Jamie Rigsby, I work for Fairfield County Board. I am MUI coordinator, also do some quality assurance, compliance type things and provider support. I started as a sub at our workshop, right out of high school, and my mom worked for the Fairfield County Board, but she worked at Orient when I was a kid, and so it was just kind of part of who I was, and so I never thought twice about getting into the field. However, I wasn't supposed to stay, but here I am. So my position has evolved. I've done lots and lots of different things as I've gotten older, my perceptions have changed. So I just keep continuing to grow and learn and work with awesome people, so.
Hello, I am Kira Mason. I work for Learning Never Ends, and I'm the director over there. I started out in a nursing home, specifically working with people in the dementia unit, and those guys are like at end of life, and it was still rewarding to be able to, you know, allow them to live the best that they could even at their end of life. But then I got referred to this job by who's now my husband, who I didn't really like. And he got me on at Learning Never Ends, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And so I'm a hardworking person, so I pour myself into work a lot. And so I think now I am past to just being there to work hard, and now I'm finding my passion or sense of responsibility to really shift the narrative of how we're providing services, because, you know, we're in a day program setting, but I am really trying to get more towards getting people out into the community and really live. So that's me.
Chelsea Hardy. I work with Fairfield County Board of DD. So I originally started working down at our school, and I was an aide down there, and that's kind of what opened my eyes to Fairfield DD. So now I am doing, and then I became an individual support coordinator and had an adult caseload. And now I'm still doing some of that, a little bit of case coverage and some other quality assurance things.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Grandy. I'm an ISC at the Director's Board. I was actually a reality TV producer in LA, telling people stories, but not the stories I wanted to be telling. And it wasn't fulfilling. So I started doing development and nonprofits, and fundraising is not my thing. So I became a DSP to a guardian, and now I'm an ISC, and feel like this is finally the right role. I can help people and tell stories and combine it into one.
What is an ISC?
Individual Support Coordinator,
Okay.
SSA.
SSA, gotcha. Okay, thank you. Yeah, tell me your name again.
Stephanie Grandy.
Thank you.
I'm Lori Farbrush. I am currently the Assistant Technology Coordinator for Fairfield County DD. I've been in that role a little over a year and a half now. Prior to that, I was the occupational therapist at Forest Grove School. So I did a lot with enabling tech for our 50 or so students that we had within the walls of the school, but they didn't have the support prior to that or when they left school. And they were also missing a huge number of, you know, individuals who can benefit from using enabling technology to help them enhance their independence. So this role was created, and it was a perfect thing for me to be doing, and I love what I'm doing, just helping other people be successful. And I think I was reflecting on how I got here, and I actually babysat for an individual who I hate to say is now like a 30-some-year-old adult in our program right now. And that was just a great experience, and that's really what kind of opened my eyes to know, you know, just looking at different ways that you can help people be independent.
I'm Alicia Greenwood. I also sort of fell into this role, I'm with Fairfield County DD.
I sort of also fell into a social work similar role when life happened in 2013 and I found myself without a job. And I actually called on some connections from Job and Family Services. I had been an intern there in college. And they pretty much said, when can you start? So I started working with families that were on cash and food assistance. And that was a tough job, but it was also, I also got to see completely different side of things that I had never seen in life. So I kind of worked through that role for a few years, started working with kiddos that were kind of 22 and up, that were really kind of down and out and were looking for a job through Job and Family. And I really found that I very much enjoyed that. I enjoyed the connections. They were a little more my age, and I was able to feel like I was being beneficial to their lives. And then I actually, a friend of mine had got a position at Fairfield DD, and she said, hey, they're hiring for a similar job that you do. Why don't you apply? So I did, and I ended up getting the role about the same time that Chelsea did. So we've been with the agency for about 5 years. And I kind of morphed into similar role, but also.
I didn't write it down.
So I did that for a few years, and then when our previous director of, I don't even remember her old title, our department basically left, I told myself that I couldn't let the opportunity pass because this is what my degrees are in from college, and this is what I always kind of saw myself in as a role. So our communications and outreach department is where I fell. So I was a service coordinator. And I fell into the communications role because I couldn't let it pass up. And this is, it's a whole new adventure. So Ann and I are working together. We actually have a third member of our team, learning each other and figuring out the department and what, the different needs are for the agency and the community and all those things working together. So it's been a challenge, but it's been fun because I love learning and I love teaching. And I can kind of do both of those in this role. So that's been interesting.
Well, to piggyback on Melissa, I'm Ann Munkin. I'm the Director of Communications and Outreach. I started my career as an educator. My degree is in middle school childhood. I taught science, and I was the classroom that everybody got to come to, no matter what everybody could learn something. And so all of the kiddos who were in the pull-out cap units came to my classroom every week or so at least to participate, to be with their peers, to learn whatever they could take out of our lesson. I liked to do labs with food, so everyone always liked that. But I kind of have just morphed that education background. I really like just helping people see that light bulb come on and understanding better. And so that's kind of the role that we're taking. I was the professional development coordinator here at the board. I'd worked in higher ed for a little while, just all of that teaching piece. And so now I really feel like we have the ability to hopefully help some people kind of understand how things can be in the future, maybe not how they used to be all the time. And just understanding a really acronym heavy, convoluted, confusing system for staff, for community stakeholders, for families, just trying to unwind, to steal the Department of Medicaid's word, unwind some of that confusingness to make it be a little bit better so that we can all do better at what we're doing.
So I'm Pam, and my degree is in art. I don't know how I got here. I graduated to the recession, that's what happened. Anyways, yeah, so I've kind of worked in a couple different systems. I worked in the municipal court system as a probation officer, fine enforcement officer, diversion officer. But I was a floater, just so you know, that's what a floater does, they do it all. And then got started working as a job trainer for several years. And then we used to have an art studio, the county board did. And so it's like, oh, I can use my art degree now and combine it with what I had already been doing. So I started working with Blue Shoe Arts as their studio coordinator. And I would say, and then that's just kind of morphed and evolved due to Medicaid and other things. But looking back, I would say that coming in and out of systems, I've seen a lot of where the system fails people. And that's I think what drives me is to see that when I see where people have been successful or thrived is when they disengaged with the system and engaged with community.
And so that's kind of what I think the passion is how do we get people more engaged in communities so they.
We also have something in the chat.
I don't think there's been, Kelly.
Kelly.
Yep, Kelly did. Do you want me to read it? or do
Sure,
you- Okay,
yeah.
okay, sure. So Kelly Spears, who is one of our ISEs, she said that she got into the DD field in college because she needed a job and her boyfriend's mom needed staff at the ICF she managed. She had no experience with individuals with DD, but gave it a shot and have been in the field ever since in multiple roles. She was a DSP, QIDP, house manager, ADS supervisor, now an ISE for Fairfield County.
Awesome.
Yeah, and my name is Kristen Thorne. I'm the Provider Resource Specialist for the county board. When I was 19, I was working 2 jobs and I needed just a stable full-time job, so I started at an ICFMR. In 96, I started with the county board, and similar to Jamie, I've done many different positions, worked at the workshop on the production lines, started in the provider department with all these lovelies over here. I do mostly providing support to our providers in Fairfield County. I also provide support to the people in our agency, to my team members. So a little bit of IT excellence right here that I'm.
Yeah, it's been great. Clutch.
Yeah, so
Yeah. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Well, thank you, everybody. I want to reflect a couple things. Unlike Katie, I went to college to study theology because I thought it was interesting with no end game. So I, like many of you, kind of fell into the field back in 2007. But to reflect back on the original quote that any observant local knows more than a visiting scientist, always no exceptions. The power, the expertise, the depth of the people in this room. We have folks in the room who are trying to hack Medicaid and free up those dollars to have people live good lives. And that is a really hard thing to do, and kudos to you, we need those. We have folks who, family history goes back to Orient and workshops, and they said, I can't imagine myself doing anything else. This is just who my family is, this is who I am. We have people like myself and others, I fell into this, and I've been here since 1988. It's who I am now, and that's great, that is amazing, we need those folks. Folks that have family members, my cousin, I babysat somebody, this is a whole new adventure for me. My primary purpose is to serve people. That is a really strong statement. And for you to be in this field, in this room today, we need that as well. School coordinators, I was a science teacher whose classroom anybody could come to. That's amazing. We need more people like that. So thank you for being in the room today. Trying to come up with a better plan. I like the positive storytelling. I didn't think I would enjoy it, and now I'm here and it's making a difference. I see where the system fails people, and that drives me. I don't know if this is thrives, but you know what I mean. That should say drives. I don't have the best handwriting. And then giving opportunities for others was a better fit for me. So knowing that our own careers can be a place where people find their own purpose. And I think a lot of us has found, well, we found ourselves. We found our own driving purpose at the same time working with people with disabilities to figure out how they can also have these same bold quotes moving forward. So I'm going to pass it off to Katie and say thank you all for being here today. And just remember and honor the expertise and the wisdom that's in this room as we continue.
Yeah, thank you so much, Candace, too. I think that you're such a good example of like what story capturing looks like, just what you just captured here in the room and like the quotes you were able to pull out, like that's storytelling right there. And I think we all do that when we take notes, right? Just like, it's like, what are we cueing in on? What are we paying attention to? So we know our motivation. We kind of know what gets us out of bed in the morning. And some of us say, I kind of fell into it, but I love people. That's a theme I'm hearing. It's like, I just love people and I want to be around people and I want to see how I can help. So if we're going to try and get a little bit more concrete here now, I'd love if we can bring to mind somebody, that as we were speaking, maybe there was a person that came to mind that we were thinking about, specifically a person with disabilities who has maybe impacted our journey. I think it was you, Chris, is it Lori? Lori, who said, there was a specific person that I worked with as a child who's now 30. Their story changed my life, right? So who is that person for you? Can you draw that person to mind? And there might be a few, but try and just narrow in on one and kind of like, let's just call them into the room right now. We get started in this training. And then as we're thinking about that person, let's try and name, and if we can just popcorn style this time, what is the change that you hope happens in this person's life because of the work that you do, because of the work that the people in this room are doing? what change do you hope to make in their life? Specifically for that one person too. So calling to mind that person and the change you hope to see in their life, and then how will we know if we're there? How will we know, yep, we made that change happen, we got there. This is proof. I'll give you guys a minute to think, and then whenever any of you have kind of narrowed in on that person and the change you'd hope to make in their life, go ahead and just speak it out. This is gonna document that as well.
The person I was thinking of, or I am thinking of, I don't actually talk to or see anymore. This is somebody who I used to support and work with. Does that
Yeah,
does
oh,
that count?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and your question was, what did you say? What do you hope?
So call to mind, if it's okay, share their first name.
Yeah.
Just call their name into the room. And then what change do you hope to make in their life, or do you hope is made in their life?
Gotcha.
Right, through this service system, right?
So Janessa was her name, and I worked with her in Columbus, and we were supporting her with employment, whatever she wanted to do, through a program called Project Search. Anyways, she didn't say a lot, and her, writing was real limited, and that's what people looked at in the school system and what we were supposed to be doing there. But I think I always saw her, I never thought of her not working. And so there was a lot of physical things that we worked on. And so my hope was that just keep going, right? And that she was gonna find a place that saw all the cool things that was her. And so we were taking out, she was a heavier lady and had some breathing things, and we were taking out like recycling bins outside and in the heat. And so I thought for sure I was gonna lose her a couple days, but we didn't. And so we just kept going. So that was my hope. And I think when she graduated and finished, she ended up working, she would play bingo with her mom in their neighborhood bingo hall. And she was like one of those lucky people that always won all the time.
Nice.
And so some of the things she was learning to do were these janitorial tasks. And so she ended up getting a job at this bingo hall, the same place that's in her neighborhood that they would go and play. But everybody knew her there. And so it was kind of a really nice fit. And so my hope is that she always had that community that knew her and accepted her and saw all the cool things that she brought.
When I was at OSU Nice Honor Center and I was a behavior specialist, I had an individual, I inherited him. Nobody really wanted him on their caseload because he was very large. He was a sex offender. I specialize with sex offenders, and so it didn't bother me that he did that, but I got him on my caseload and he had the most restrictive supports I've ever seen. I mean, he had every hold that you possibly have, every restriction you possibly have. And I'm like, he had triple staff. I mean, he had a lot going on. And so before I met him, I wanted to kind of do some research and just see what I was walking into, And so I looked at his trauma timeline and his history. It was the most heartbreaking thing I've ever experienced. I couldn't help but cry. I mean, this poor guy had just been through the ringer since he was born. It was just, he was a product of incest, and it just got worse after he was born. So after I got on his caseload, it just hurt. I'm like, what kind of life is this? I mean, triple staff, all these holds. And so I'm looking at it, and I actually went over to his house and spent some time with him talking to some of the staff. And staff are always the best to talk to, especially if they've been there for a while. He didn't have a lot of turnover, which was kind of weird for having that type of supports. You'd think the turnover would be very high with him. I really just sat down with him, and after he finally, we gained some trust, there, and I really tried to figure out what makes this guy tick. Like, you've been institutionalized most of your life, then you have triple staff. I mean, it's just a status life. And so I really quickly realized all this guy really wanted was positive attention, which most of us want. So positive, and his whole life was just negative. I mean, he'd been abused by everybody. He was pimped out by his mom. I mean, it was just the saddest life. And so I started writing in to support some positive reinforcements of like team activities. Like we would take him wherever he wanted to go. And because his behaviors were so high, we did very short increments. Like if he was awesome for like 2 days, you know, without punching anybody in the face or raping anybody, we would do this activity. And just watching him like slowly like get safer, because at first the whole team was like, we can't take him in the community. Like, are you serious? He'll kill somebody. But that was all he really ever wanted, and nobody ever really trusted him enough. But I finally convinced the team, like, we can do this. Like, we're all together. The police are there if we need. I mean, like, you know. And I had him on my caseload for 7 years. By the time I handed him off when I left, which that was probably the heartbreak. Like, I wanted to stay on his team just to be like an advocate because I was so proud of him. He only had 1 staff. They actually just called us about remote supports for overnights. He had no restrictive supports left. When I left, he still had general supports, but just because the team like really trusted him and just kind of gave him a chance to like let him live a life that he had never even experienced before, and he got a taste of how awesome life can be. That like it was just a cool story, and he's one of my favorite guys.
Nice. Beautiful, thank you. 1 or 2 more people who are gonna add to that. And what we're doing here is Candace is kind of taking notes, and we're gonna come up with a shared vision statement for our time together. So as you're kind of sharing out what change you wish to make or which change you've seen, we will kind of set the tone for the rest of this training as far as like, this is the change we all kind of hope to make. Because I think Lisa's speaking for us here and Laura's speaking for us. Like, we agree. Like, that's an awesome story, right? Is there anyone else who'd like to chime in? Looking at you, Aaron.
Yeah, I know, I was just trying to pick one, I can't pick one.
Yeah.
Okay. Stephanie, that's easy, I'm sorry, Rachel.
She wasn't mine, it's okay.
She spends the day at the center, but now she volunteered 1 day a week. And it started out staff, went with her the whole time. And then it moved to Zoom, where we could just watch her without staff. And now she's on her own. So we'll take her and drop her off, but then she's on her own for those 2 hours.
Where is she volunteering?
At a local food pantry. She's helping stock and things like that. The first couple of times she went, she came back and she said, I'm scared. I didn't have anybody that I really knew with me. Now, that's where I'm going today, right? She gets kind of upset when she can't go. So she's come a long way, and that's what I'm hoping for all of the people. It's scary, but you know, here we are 3 months later. I'm ready to go. What's up?
So what I heard in the room was a couple things. One, we all agree we all want positive attention. And then the woman that you just shared about as well, me too. I don't like to go new places where I don't know anybody. And I don't want to go back if I didn't feel like that was a safe place where people were going to be friendly to me. But what I heard overall with these 3 stories is that if we just keep going, we know that there is a place. And that place can be the food pantry, our neighborhood, a job, a friend, right? Place can kind of be a little bit vague because we know that that kind of depends on the person. So I'm just going to capture that. If we just keep going, we know there is a place. Does that feel like the shared vision?
Can we have our vision statement for today? We'll get to an agenda here next. We're just doing a big intro here. And this is actually gonna be my favorite part this whole time here, because I really love just listening and asking questions. But are we there yet? Have we gotten to this place yet? We reached our destination? Yeah. I think that's what gets us up in the morning too. We're not there yet. We know we have work to do. And that's why storytelling is like really important. I gave the example before of the documentary I watched that revealed the horrors of institutions, you know, that was filmed in the 1960s that led to, you know, a groundswell of support for deinstitutionalization. And I understand too that like, and I've met people, like amazing people like Denny Berger, who helped people who lived in Orient, you know, get a life in the community once that institution closed. So there are people on the ground. It's not just storytellers who make this difference, right? But we're a piece of the puzzle. And story is a piece of the puzzle, even if you're not a storyteller. So as long as we're not there, story is going to have to be something that we kind of tack on to our life, that we commit to sharing and telling and being a voice for this movement in our own way. So what's ahead? We are going to briefly touch on the power of storytelling. That's why we're all here. I think you guys all kind of have a belief that story matters, but we'll just kind of give an overview of why is it so powerful. And then we'll bring back to mind that person we sort of brought into the room earlier. Whose story do you hold? We'll do a small like personal activity where you'll work on that individually. And we'll get together in a small group after that to tell a story. So the small group will be like 3 people. Some of you are looking at me like, please don't do small groups, but I promise it will not be painful. We have very specific instructions for you to follow. And then we'll get back together as a large group and we'll share out some more stories at the end before we wrap up. Okay? I believe we go till noon.
Yep.
Okay. So that's good.
All right. So we're going to jump in. So Katie and I have talked a lot about the power of storytelling, and we think that we know there are 3 main reasons why story matter. And some of you have already kind of talked about those without explicitly naming them. That story allows us to step into somebody else's shoes and gain empathy and understanding for who those people are and why they might be different. So when you talk about that man who was a sex offender, when you mentioned his trauma timeline, we all were like, oh my gosh, I can understand and empathize why these things might happen. We can empathize, even though sex offender is so far on the margin that none of us want to. The second one, storytelling allows us to connect with others and build relationships based on that shared experience and emotions. When you talk about the woman in the bingo hall, I can see it. I can see those ladies with their perms and their daubers and their little, you know, lucky charm. My grandma was a bingo lady, so I can see it. I want to know more about that. I want to be in that bingo hall. I want Katie to make a story, right? I want to hear more about how that's going with her. And then we know that story inspires us to dream and imagine of a better future, encouraging us to work towards those goals and aspirations. So when you heard that story, you didn't say, well, what we can do about that. You were able to imagine 3 staff, multiple goals. How might we move to something that's better? It might not be full inclusion, independent in the community by ourselves, living alone, but that doesn't mean that our imagination can't say, what are those small steps we can get to imagine and work towards a little bit better of a future for folks. So Katie and I know that the way we talk about people and the way that we see people shapes the power of whether or not these things can happen. And we've seen that all happen in our own careers, my plans, ISPs, whatever it might be, that the way that we tell a story about a person actually impacts the power of it actually happening. So I'm going to pass it off to Katie to talk a little bit more about a historical example.
Yeah. And I think something that you had said earlier, remind me your name. Anne. So Anne, you had said, you know, there's something more that's possible beyond like even what's happening right now. So that's the power of story too. Like we can show how actually the future that we have in mind is already happening. We just might not realize it. We might not be upholding those types of stories, or we might be telling those stories, but with a filter that's a little bit too disability. So it doesn't seem like it's this future that we're imagining, right? And we'll talk more about that filter. James Baldwin said it really well. He said, the world changes according to the way people see it. And if you alter, even by a millimeter, the way people look at reality, then you can change it. So if you alter even by a millimeter, the way people look at reality, you can change it. That's what stories do. We can all think of movies that like totally changed the way we looked at reality, right? But it's even in the room, like the way you guys just talked about people, it's altering the reality of people with disabilities, the way we talk about them, right? And that's when we can really make the shift. So these are 2 pictures here side by side. The one on the left is the Capitol crawl that happened in March 1990. I was around the same age as this young woman walking or crawling up the stairs here, Jennifer Keelan. She was the youngest person in this protest to take part, right? This protest was organized by a group of people with disabilities who were just totally fed up and knew that the Americans with Disabilities Act was going up for a vote. And this was their way of declaring like, you must pass this law into action. And I get chills when I talk about it. She's still an activist today. She's still doing amazing work. 4 months after this picture was taken, President George H.W. Bush signed into law the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so this is just an example of like, that picture is a story. That picture alone is a story. But then she also got in front of Congress and she gave testimony along with a lot of other people with disabilities who gave their testimony to let these lawmakers know, like these are the barriers that we face. And this is the face of what those barriers do. This is what it looks like, right? Jennifer was very instrumental though. I think her young age, it just was a very impactful story and lawmakers brought it up even after they signed, like it made a huge difference. So storytelling has the power to shift how we think, feel, and act. We just know that, right? It doesn't have to be done on this grand national level, right? We're gonna bring back to mind that person whose story we hold because the change we wanna make is in their life. It's in a local way, right? It's in a small way. It's not like we want things to be signed into law, which would be nice, but I'm not gonna attempt that right now in this Congress. I would say that, the change that we really hope to make is individual and it's in these small moments, right? It's in these small moments, the way we introduce somebody when we, go to the library with them, the way that we help them present themselves and show up to a work interview. Those are the stories that we're also telling. So this is my friend Jessica. She and I met when I was her DSP. And the way that I was introduced to her and her story was her case file. My employer sat me down and said, I think you'd be great with Jessica. She's really tough. Much like Lisa, you kind of shared this story, right? But you're really calm, you're really gentle, and she's had a lot of turnover, so we need you in there. Okay, and they're like, she's very aggressive. She might hit, she might bite, she doesn't belong in the community, essentially, is what they told me. She needs to stay in her apartment and just basically in a padded room. When I went to meet her for the first time, I realized this is a bright woman who is trapped in her apartment and she just wants out. She wants people to see that she loves musicals, that she knows Hebrew, that she's really good at Googling things, that she knows where every single restaurant in the city is and can get you there. That's what she wants people to know. And she has a trauma history, So the reason I bring her up is to say that, over the years, the way her story has actually shifted her entire life. And I've seen that firsthand. And there's also things about her that I could share with you today that I'm not going to, because it's not relevant, the filter is important. We have a filter in our own life. I'm not going to tell you guys that I get really gassy after I eat too many chickpeas. No one needs to know that. But sorry. Okay. No, but we have things that we keep to ourselves, even about our friends and our family, right? And that's because we respect them. So that the same thing holds true for people with disabilities. But I think sometimes being in the service mindset, we approach things with an expertise and we're this is their label, right? I mean, that was what I was trained in. This is diagnosis, this is how you treat somebody, this is how you change a feeding tube, and then you go meet the person. So it's not to say that we're at fault for that. It's just sometimes our mindset can be a little servicey. And so how do we break out of that and have a filter, especially when we're in community and when we're trying to get to this vision that we're trying to get to. So we're gonna pass out a little worksheet. Maybe Candace, you can explain what to do on it. It's pretty self-explanatory.
So this group's of 3?
No, this is the one-on-one.
Okay, so Katie's gonna pass out worksheets here, and we're gonna take a few minutes to fill out this worksheet about a person that you know. So think of a person with a disability that you know, that you support, that you love, that you care about. It can be somebody you used to work with, somebody you presently work with.
Oh, awesome.
Essentially somebody whose story you feel like you know pretty well. And we're gonna do this we're gonna do this by ourselves, so kind of in a reference space over the next couple of minutes. And we're gonna just ask you to fill out this worksheet about them. Yeah.
How are you?
When did you speak in?
A little bit ago.
I like miss everybody.
Yeah.
Hi,
How are you?
good, how are you?
Good.
Oops, hi, this is the change.
Tell your story.
Chelsea, take the whole packet.
Do what?
Take that whole packet.
Get all, okay, cool.
No, wait, right where the paper you just picked up, there's like a, yep, grab that whole section right there.
Oh, gotcha.
Keep going, there you go.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, thank you.
Give you guys about one more minute, looks like people are wrapping up.
Yeah, she's in. Perfect in my brain.
Yeah.
I just don't know what last name. Oh, just send it to me. Word. Okay, perfect.
So as you guys are kind of wrapping up your questions here, we're just gonna go around the room and call to the room the first name of the person, that's all. Everybody can go around and just name the first name of the person that you brought to mind. So, does that make sense?
Me?
Yes.
Name the name I have.
Just the first name.
Brandon.
Name the name.
Brandon.
There you go.
Cody.
Ryan,
Devin,
Margaret. Jace. Gerald.
Jimmy, John Titus.
Matt.
Both first names.
Matt.
Marjorie. Mike.
Carrie.
Brian.
Well, thank you all. We know that, this dozen or so names that we've all said out loud. And in my career, I know I probably could name hundreds of names of stories that I've been involved in or whose stories I've been told about through colleagues or through meetings. So I appreciate you all taking this time to really think respectfully about that person's story. And what we're going to talk about here is a quote that you've probably heard. Definitely Katie and I have heard this in other trainings, that we only fear people whose stories we don't know. So when we think about the people on this piece of paper and what Katie shared with us about Jessica when she first said, this is gonna happen and this might happen and I need to be aware of this. There probably was a sense of fear before you walked into Jessica's apartment for the first time. We were just joking that they do lunch monthly now, and she's laughing that they always argue about what restaurant and then they just wind up at the exact same chili parlor every single month. So that fear is not there because Katie has gotten to know Jessica's story and has gotten involved in her story, not as a paid staff anymore, but as a genuine friendship. And we know that those things can shift, that if I have no idea who you are, oh my gosh, I heard these things about you, or I don't know anything about you, and you might look different or talk different or show up different in the world, that can create a sense of fear. That is especially true of people with disabilities. And then often, in our world, sometimes we hear it of us versus them. Katie and I are kind of aligning it as understanding this as, is this person nothing like me? I can never imagine my life being like that. I can't understand why that would even be, or just like me. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I know why you might tick like that, or why this might be the way that you show up. So we kind of define not like me is that feeling that that person is so far removed from my own life, can't even relate. My brain will not even let me go there. I can't even understand why a person would do those types of things. I can't even understand why she would be so obnoxious or angry or whatever that word is. It's probably, I think for some of us, might know people who don't understand what we do in our job. Well, I don't really know, I'm not really trained in that. I don't have a degree, I've never learned about, I wouldn't know what to say. So I can't even imagine that I could have a conversation with a human being because you're so different. I'm not even sure I'm allowed to, right? We might have said, well, am I qualified? Could I? Yeah, it's not really my space. Or you're so different that I can't perceive how this would even make sense for us. We would have literally nothing in common. What would be the point? Just like me, and we're all kind of nodding, is that feeling when we can relate. Man, I love that too. I love musicals. I love reading. I love Googling stuff, Jessica, me too. That someone we know, okay, we can understand that you have emotions and feelings, bad days, good days, just like any of us. And that we know that people often have hopes and dreams, even if they don't verbalize it or actually know exactly what those might be. We also know that just like me means that someone cares about other people and they want to be cared about as well. In storytelling, both from video or social media or press releases or grants, any type of story, even around the water cooler with our coworkers, we know that the words that we use aid in that person's story or hinder them. And that can move along that spectrum, that on any given day, anybody that we wrote on this paper can kind of fall along that dotted line here of like me and just like me, depending on the words that we use. And I know we know these words, the not like me words are distractors and repellers. You know, how I talk about a person, how I describe them, how I write about them in my notes can either distance me from you or draw me in a little bit more. Can you all just give me a couple quick examples? What are those repellent words that we hear, that we've used, that we know kind of keeps people in that not like me box? You can just rattle them off really fast.
Behavior,
Diagnosis.
I did that fast.
Antisocial.
Social,
Aggressive.
aggressive,
Cannot.
yeah. A lot of those, nonverbal. Defiant, I've never heard that before. Lots of those. This list could span many, many pages. And I'm sure if we read people's case files, there'd be lots of those that pop up in many infinite variations.
Let's throw client in there as well, and individual
Thank you.
instead of person, right?
How about our individual?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of this is just language that we were taught, that's the respectful way. I know I was taught, we don't call them clients, we call them consumers. And that was supposed to be like a step up, but we're just evolving, right? This isn't about shaming or, it's just we're evolving our language.
Sorry.
Well, that's a shame corner over there. If you wanna get some shame.
Trying to get on?
The mic.
Yeah, you both did it at the same time, Allison.
So, so the not like me words, we know it's pretty rare that I'm referred to as these things, right? If I'm a client, it's because I'm going to my bank. If I'm these aren't really things that people say about me in my daily life, right? Defiant might be reserved like when my husband and I are fighting and I won't back down, but other than that, that doesn't really happen day to day in my social interactions. But the just like me are things that we hear often about ourselves, right? Oh, she's friendly. Maybe not for me, but people might be friendly, right? She's nice. They're creative, right? Fun.
Sense of humor.
Sense of humor, yeah.
Independent.
Yeah.
Artist.
Intelligent.
Successful.
Successful.
Baker.
Definitely not like me, I'm not a good baker. So words, we all know this. We know that the words matter, but the words also shift perception. That if I'm introducing somebody from the list from the left, that is not a person like me. That is not a person I want to get to know. That is not a person I have any interest in. Person on the right, oh, I want to meet a friendly, nice, creative, fun, sense of humor person who's independent, and they're an artist, and they're a successful baker. Heck yeah, who is this person? Let me meet them, let's hang out, let's go bake something creative. So for stories, we know that the way we talk about people, the words we use can shift perception over time, and that can really help people shift their own story in their own lives. Katie's gonna talk about how we as staff people or people involved in people's lives have the power to do this day to day.
And I just want to go back to this picture really quick of Jessica because her story started off pretty horrible, right? Pretty miserable. And as over the years, I got to know her and we became friends and these pictures we would take together, right? I had the hardest time asking her to look in the camera and smile, right? She just wouldn't do it. There was a lot of pictures like this. A lot of just grimaces in the camera. This picture I look at and it almost makes me get choked up because she is on. She's on, she's like, here I am and I'm smiling. And there's also something that happens not just in the minds of others, but in the minds of ourselves when our story shifts, right? So her story shifting gave her confidence and it gave her the ability to be beautiful and show up in that space as herself. So we are impacting people's individual lives as well when we shift their stories. So so words matter. We also have the power. We are the filter. We have the power to shift the way these stories are told. It's our purpose in life even, to take this into our own hands. How do we filter out the repellent words and focus on the words that will attract people to them, that will help people start to see them as more like everybody else, right? So because we have this control over what we share about a person's story, we have to be really thoughtful every time we approach their introduction to somebody else. And I think the key to being a thoughtful filter is being aware of the context. So some of you might be thinking right now, but you have to say the diagnosis sometimes. Like, we can't just pretend like they don't have a disability, right? So context really does play a role in storytelling. And the way I think about context is just, who are you telling the story to? And what is your goal? So context matters, right? Are you introducing them on a first date? Are you helping them get a first date? Who are you telling their story to? What's the goal? Or is it during an interview for a job, right? Who are you telling the story to? What's the goal? Or is it in a doctor's office, right? I think in 99% of the contexts, we filter out things that are repellents. We don't need to share that stuff. I think even in the case of a doctor's office, we lead with attractors, because a doctor is a human too. And we want that person to feel attracted to the patient that they're serving, so that they get better care. So in most cases, we want to be thinking in terms of attractors, right? We also know our vision. We have a filter, and we also know that we have a vision for the story. We have a goal in mind when we're talking about this person. This vision right here for today is that if we just keep going, we know there's a place in the community with people that is positive. So that's our vision. When we believe that vision is possible, we start to tell stories that are actually going to serve that vision. So having a positive filter with a vision creates stories that will create change, right? Having a positive filter with a vision equals stories that will create change. And how do we know whether or not this positive filter and vision is working, right? How do we know, like, okay, we think we're doing it right. Are we creating stories? Are we telling stories that will create change? I think one of the questions that you can ask yourself after you share a story about a person with a disability is, after I tell this story, what happens next? Okay. What happens next? Are they going to get the date? Are they going to get the job? Is the person going to want to call them up and ask them out for lunch, you know? Or are they going to feel a little bit more like, oh, that person's not really like me. I'm probably not qualified to work with them. Probably not qualified to be with them. So what happens next after the story? One more thing about Jess before we go into your group activity. And this is a picture of her on her birthday a few years back. And it's with a group of women from her temple. So this group of women knows Jessica really just for who she is, the positive filter and the vision that we had for her early on. And they ask her to lunch every month as well. She loves to go out to eat. That's why that's a thing. She loves to go out to eat. And they make sure to include her at different activities going on at the temple. And they also remember her birthday every year, and they organize the birthday party now. I'm pretty sure I organized this birthday party, but they are the ones to do it now. So over the years, like, it's not just me holding Jess's story, but it's all of these women and the people at her temple who hold it as well. So now we're gonna move into a group activity. We'll do a little bit of storytelling. Candace can present.
Yeah, so let's go back to the person that you wrote about here. And then if you guys do we self-organize? Is that okay, or do you want to count off? Okay, self-organize in groups of 3, we trust you all. Get in groups of 3 and then just agree on one person. So everybody's coming into their group with 3 different people, but just decide who you feel like has the strongest story here, knows a lot about that person. And then, is it the next worksheet, Katie? I think so. Yes, so if we're going with Brian, our group of 3 has decided that it's Brian, we're gonna fill this out together. What we want you to do is pretend if they're an adult, pretend you're putting them on a date, let's say. Now, we're not looking for hot dates or hookups here. We are looking to make sure that we are presenting people with their positive best self first, for companionship and connectedness, and to be seen and known for their gifts. If they are a minor, obviously if they are under the age 18, we're not putting them on a dating website. Pretend you are introducing them to a local play group. So just use your judgment there. And then answer those questions on each side that we are looking for. What are the attractors of how we talk about that person? And what words are we intentionally filtering out to avoid being repellents in this person? So go ahead and get in groups 3. If you need help finding the group, let us know.
And we're gonna spend about 10 minutes here. We'll spend a good amount of time here, so you guys have time to like swap and arm wrestle.
Yes, ma'am.
Or you can leave them on, I guess, that goes with this.
There's a word game.
Oh, this is, I don't know, man. Hopefully that hasn't. Thank you. Are you guys participating?
Yeah.
Did you get the other ones for me? Sorry. Hard to see.
I have that. On someone.
No, this is my person.
No one person.
Yeah.
I think he's 18, but I don't, like, I don't. You know,
Okay. So this is great. So we need to fill out these boxes, correct?
I was actually
All right, so let me talk a little bit about the board side.
Okay.
So it's very like you are.
Yeah.
But. No. She is no, bad things. One of the things is that if she she will yell at you. Her team,
nice job.
I don't think you want
Okay.
My handwriting is true, so I.
Nice job.
And so, if you give her, so like, she's happy. That's literally all she wants. Like, she will tell you. She's like, I want to make her sure how much you want.
Yes, we should.
Right, I was just gonna say that, so do we want to leave it around or do we want to be more specific?
A lot of times, she's like,
Does he like to try to do things? So like maybe it's something that also likes to, or different, you know what I mean, like to broad. I teach her like, I know that doesn't want that, it was exactly same. Yeah, or like they would direct it. Yes.
She's very good.
Yeah. You need somebody who's, yeah, let's go do some fun stuff.
Yeah, maybe kind of pushing someone who also has a bucket list of things to try. You know, like you're like, okay, let's do somewhere where try it. 'Cause that was, yeah. or some kind of, I was your age.
I don't have as much
I mean, not always a person, but I like somebody who's YouTube. We're going to the same park, having the same walk, but if somebody says, let's go to this new park, I'm gonna be like, okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's.
So someone who like, who's challenges.
All the time.
Yes.
Told me three jokes yesterday that they were horrible, and he didn't like to hear they were horrible, and so he's just very animated and very excited about. Oh, no. So, I don't know about a dating.
Okay, so we have companionship and adventure, just looking for someone. Everything's open. Okay, all right, so it's qualities.
So I did this thing and I
So artistic. I was just gonna say, because then he was artist, so he's creative.
So, okay.
I can hook him up, see how funny on there.
I didn't know.
Gotcha, that.
No, it's just one volunteer.
What's something?
Well, there were online people, but the lady who won it
Is he grounded, like, provide some of that stability, somebody who might be a little bit more adventurous or like.
Yeah.
Wait, these big plans, like, yeah.
Because he's
A little bit more about what we're doing, like, picture.
He's kind of a yeah, you're not getting anything else done because the entire.
I agree.
That's what I was just gonna say. Okay. Yeah.
But let's save that for offers.
Yeah. Yeah, jot it down.
when we had our adult, they would be
I had a sound.
She wants to know more about why you think that is, what that means.
You guys know the words too. I just.
So like,
Right.
Next weekend.
You will never, ever, ever. Yeah, I put on my list, sometimes when not appropriate. I'm never gonna say that anything wants to go and
See all the things that life offers, you know, talk about experiences.
I don't know.
I don't. Yeah, they're like, of the boy bands, they're like, yes.
So.
We're going to go positive attribute.
Maybe challenge him to some.
They're like, these are keys.
I didn't use to appreciate that about my
I gave them compliments, I'm sure he brought it up. They were like, sort of vanilla,
White.
Are you thinking he's
I'm like,
encourages creativity, but it also challenges.
I asked him if he has lots of stability.
Not challenging someone's stability.
Yeah, all right, so life goals. Maybe. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, the other one's.
Oh,
He was like, I don't know. And the other was like. Like, it's so hard. I want to keep it on my task, but I can't. It's hard. It is. He told me about his brother before, and I'm like, he's kidding. He told me about it. To do it. I found it.
So it's just like, hey, you can, it's like,
Entire conversation.
Okay, so where are they? I think I set it on path of financial intelligent, you know what I mean? Like, I think we were.
It looks like an ant.
Oh, yeah. Life is I would die a million dollars. Anything you do with that, like, I mean, it might be saying, basically, it's just back. And I like, oh, because I'd be like, fine. Yeah. So once you do, but so we turn it down. Sounds like every time it's like, also, I went to.
Yeah, like 9-year-old.
Yeah, there we go.
Take care of this.
You can tell I know it's very much for
That's what they say.
Can you tell us my story?
Yeah, so.
2 more minutes, 5 more minutes. Oh, no, 5 more minutes.
Like, he like, yes, he is. It's great for her to make it.
I click yes, or swipe. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
So whenever.
They were so cute.
Okay, I was like.
I feel like I'm saying
Best quality.
Yeah, she can pass the
I'm like, sure, I mean, this is your day.
You're right, I think I might have said it. We're gonna.
Oh, yeah, like, it's like, oh, you don't want to
Yeah, this is where I'm wondering if my life goal is to change. So my life goal is
Yeah. That's right. I mean, she called me. Can I call you?
Yes.
Yeah.
What are the names? The name.
I need more money.
He needs a accountability partner.
You ready?
Okay, hold on, what is he looking for?
Prices are going up, but they're very.
There's lots of people in that room.
Yeah, very much about myself.
Somebody to
I
like.
go to a very large church. We've got them close for years, but I'm terrible. And I think that's artists. Our old church was a lot bigger, and I knew everyone. So that for me, yes, I'm there for ourselves, but I also enjoy communication and interaction, meeting people, and when I walk in, they bother me. So I chat with how do I get over this? If I just start something where I can navigate around it, we have a common interests and things like that. And so we just did a private read-out class and we had 27 ladies show up, and I'm like, that's it, we're excited. Well, we capped it because we didn't want there to think that we could. Right, exactly, like we're like, we don't want there to be a whole lot of people, so we capped it at 30 plus.
All right, and then you're gonna start to come back together as a larger group. So I'm at final thoughts.
I just had somebody join 10 minutes ago.
Everyone welcome you into their group. I'm sorry. I should.
What did you think? What did you see? Who wants to be the next volunteer?
Share your. Yeah.
Well, you know, in terms of
As we come back, we're gonna just start with a quote from John O'Brien. If you guys know him, he's an author and person-centered planning guru, amazing human, who actually helped me prepare for this presentation today. So he has his fingerprint on what we talked about. One of my favorite quotes from him says, "Inclusion is unexpected stories about people with disabilities happening in unexpected places." So as we come back together, we're gonna spend this next little bit kind of sharing out the stories as each group can go around and share the story that you came up with. And as we're listening to you, we're gonna just imagine this unexpected life that you dreamed up for this person, right? They're known for the things that you love about them in this life, not their disability, right? They're not relegated to disability services, but they have a life beyond their label, right? And then as we're listening, we can all kind of start to think, okay, after this story, what happens next for this person, right? What's the vision? And we can just bring it back to our shared vision. So we're gonna just go around the room. If you guys want a popcorn, that's fine, or we can just start on either end and each group kind of share out, what did you come up with? What's your dating profile for this person?
Did you say popcorn?
Popcorn.
What's that?
Oh, just like anybody who wants to go can like start, and then we don't have to go in like a row.
I assumed, but I wanted to make.
It's a little bit less stressful for me personally, because I feel like I'm not thinking like, oh God, I'm next. I can just go whenever I want. So, do you want to popcorn?
Chickpeas when she said that.
Keep them away from me. No falafel, please. Yeah.
Do you want?
I don't.
Okay. Do we wanna, okay, well, so in our group, we picked, Brian, who is the person I was bringing to the group. We said that he was looking for a laid-back person who enjoys a quiet evening of conversation at home. Why are you laughing?
That's a great way to put it.
Absolutely. His best qualities is he's respectful, he's hilarious, he's dependable, and he's very organized. He offers stability, consistency, and an accountability partnership. Like, he will keep you accountable to things, which I'm not sure if we would need for that in a dating.
Good to know
Yeah,
before you get into
there
a
was a few things
relationship.
we had to rephrase or life goals, and this we had really good conversation, but the life goals was kind of hard because taking a step back, and this wasn't what I would say, any goals that we would come up with for him were our goals and not his. Like, it was very hard but we said to have a stable, meaningful friendship with someone who shares similar values, is what we said. My goal would be like, I want Brian to have one unpaid friend. But
I love that goal. Yes, thank you. That was one of the outcome measurements that we had at Starfire. How many unpaid friends do people have in their lives after their time with us at Starfire? And it was a beautiful way to measure our progress. And everybody wants friendships, so, yeah. Awesome, thank you. Swipe right or left? I don't know which one it is.
I don't know which, we were discussing, we don't know which one. it is.
Swiping right, I don't know. So this is. Okay.
Like a mom.
Yes.
I asked him before, like, my friend, do you want to live with a girl? And he's like, she doesn't have a room bed. He was very particular about his things and his space.
Yeah. Hey, there's lots of marriages out there that operate that way, so I get it. Who's next? Are we gonna popcorn? Who wants to get inspired to share their dating profile next?
Okay.
Yeah.
So we talked about JT, and he is looking for a partner to keep him grounded and focused, but wants to have new adventures in life and likes to try new things. Best qualities: he has complete contagious joy, energetic all the time, confident in himself, inquisitive, and also very considerate of other people. Things that he offers: he brings joy, positivity, confidence, but humble. Like lots of laughs and energy, and is a good judge of character. And life goals, new adventures. I couldn't go I was trying not to be cliche, but like I think the opportunities are endless. He has lots of new adventures, of fun, learning, and overall, right now, he would want to be a YouTube or a TikTok comedian.
Right.
So.
Yeah, not just them.
I mean, it's pretty much my pastor by church. So we talked about Gerald. So he loves going to the casino, the driving range, batting cages, Daily Busters. I mean, dude's honest guy. I actually did help him create a dating profile, and then he ended up meeting a girl on his own who happened to be also associated. And they were so cute. Like, it was like life goals. I'm like, oh, never really gonna shake that. But when he was making this dating profile, it was very important to him that their relationship was faith-based and like God was the center of their relationship, and that he'd have somebody to pray with, they go to church with, and hold hands at church. And she also had to be dark chocolate.
No.
That was important to him. What he offers is consistency. He's extremely loyal. He's very thoughtful. He's super silly, a little jokester. He remembers everything, even if it's not exactly how it happened. His best qualities are he's respectful, genuine, generous, super lovable. His life goals, which we talked about a lot actually, where he did want a GED because he didn't want the system helping him find a job. He wanted to actually have a resume and find a job on his own, and he knew he really couldn't get a super stellar job without his GED. He really wanted to get married and have children and become a rapping pastor.
A rapping pastor.
Go to church now. Yeah. He went to a few churches, didn't last. I think got a couple, because he would be loud, because he'd start rapping in church.
He needs to be in the front of the room.
Yeah, we filled out the wrong form.
Oh, you did? That was fun. Sure. So I kind of feel like when I wrote this, I went back and forth from talking about somebody to it being like, I'm that person. So I'll try and keep it all in one suit here. So this is Brandon's profile. And he's looking for companionship and adventures, looking for someone who is also open to going to new places and somebody who loves to plan. I need a planner. Best qualities, he's very creative, very thoughtful, patient, and empathetic. Offers, what he's bringing is a great deal of patience, a super calm demeanor, great listener and sincerity, but also loves a good laugh. Life goals, to build this is the cliche thing again too, but to build a lasting partnership with someone who will encourage his creativity and challenge him to step out of his comfort zone every once in a while as he's building his creative business.
This is Margaret, and what she's looking for is somebody who knows what they want, somebody who's going to be respectful and loving and knows boundaries and is very consistent. Her best qualities is she's charismatic and she's confident, she's thoughtful, and she's super independent. The things that she will offer to relationship, she's very honest, she's very thoughtful, and she brings a great sense of humor. And then the life goal, this is a big one, to be a personal consultant to help people build the confidence in starting their own business.
Nice. She needs to work with Brandon. Wait a minute.
Swipe right.
Margaret and Brandon.
Kira, did you guys fill out the one with the filter, context, and vision by any chance? Do you guys want to share what you had, because that is the next page, and that's something you guys can also.
Yeah. So we have, for what do you decided not to include, was physically aggressive and has a trauma history of just some verbal aggressiveness and the things that happened in her past. But the things that the attractor words, we have caring, loving, thoughtful, confident, charismatic, friendly, a very hard worker, and a great dancer. Who are you telling the story to? We have a potential employee trying to get her a job, her dream job. And then what is your goal by sharing this story? We would like to share how Margaret could be an asset to the organization, how her positivity, her positive attributes can be exhibited in the community.
Super powerful to bring that filter into the room and just hear like, well, okay, what you just shared and what you know, like the full story is two totally different feelings. More repelled by that filter, right? Just naturally as a human being. And then to know that, you know, the way that we can see people and the lens we can put on them can actually totally change, even like what Lisa was saying. those things that show up as quote unquote behaviors can actually start to even fade away once we start to use that filter more with them. It opens opportunities. I love that you already created a dating profile for somebody. That's awesome.
We did that on the last, telling them, a lot of the people on my former caseload had dating profiles and I'd always put them on dating sites that I wasn't on. So that could get awkward.
Awesome. I think it's cool because, you know, like these questions are like, they're applicable to wherever you go, right? Like you're gonna be asked these questions at a job interview, or you're gonna want somebody who's going into a volunteer role in a food pantry to kind of be known this way too. So it really applies anywhere. So when you talk about the context, like where is this being shared, who's hearing it, like let's apply it just anywhere now. Let's just take this kind of as a metaphor of like, okay, dating profile. Next time we go into a scenario, you know, dating profile, how do we attract people to them? Great. Okay, so.
Can I add one thing to that? I know, just was curious, as a provider, something to think about, like, in the RFP process. So if you were to see an RFP that was maybe reframed a little bit like this, how would that change for you? What would that change for you, I guess is some things to think about.
Is that just referral, looking for?
Yes, the referral for a provider, a request for provide.
On that same note, like, I guess just calling to mind, like, where else would you guys imagine sharing these stories in your work? Can we just brainstorm real quick, like, how else does story already show up, and where can you apply this?
We're constantly, so I'm from Perry County, staff turnover is everywhere. Like I would love for this to be what the first time you're meeting someone, because usually by the time if I am involved through behavior supports, there's already a negative connotation to, oh, this one must be difficult, right? Like I would much rather that we're introducing people with this type of thing, and it might, if I can get to them before one SSA talks to the incoming one saying good luck, you know, like I worked with a man who came from another smaller county that had been through every SSA that they had there, and they all quit on him, right? So it reframing reputation would just be huge. And again, that's service world part, right?
Yeah.
That's not even talking about friendships, relationships, even just being a customer in a store or experiencing something, you know, going to see music. I just hate when, you know, somebody's plan shows up before they get there, right?
I think what you said, reframing reputation, is incredibly important. When, I don't remember, maybe it was Gerald or maybe it was JT, when you say like boundless joy, everybody's like, yeah. When you say physically aggressive, everybody's like, oh no.
Right.
And almost, I'm expecting one of those things if I go to meet that person. If you're telling me to look out for a charismatic, boundlessly joyful planner with an excellent memory, I'm ready for that. Also, I'm ready to get out of the car and distance myself and write up a report and file an MUI. You know, so we almost program ourselves to expect what we're telling. And there are definitely times where I do need to know that somebody has a sexual history. Yes, that's important. Don't keep those details from people. But what's the other side of that story that, you know, are we setting people up for failure when their reputation is preceding them in a negative way?
It sounded like your filter stuff you're wanting us to pull out, like I'm already thinking of things we had to reframe, or is that, I don't want that to be the way we introduce someone. Like, but is there a positive way to spin that, right? Like you could call Brian a hermit, right? Like people probably would, I wouldn't, but he's kind of, you know, tucked away, doesn't interact with other people, independent. I know I put that up over there, but that can be kind of, you know, almost negative too sometimes. So,
Why can it be negative though? Like, I would love you to pull that thread, because I think you're right there.
We would say, oh, well, he's very independent about things, which also kind of implies like, leave him alone, right? Like, don't ask more questions or see if he needs support to have a better interaction with somebody else.
And it's isolating, and it assumes he doesn't want friendship, and that may not be the case, and maybe he needs both. He needs the balance.
Well, and I think, you know, we talk all the time about
removing the people that we support from the system and being a hostage to the system. Within the system, we talk that way. When we're doing interviews, when we're talking to other staff and people in other agencies, and I think we just do it out of natural, that's how we, and again, so you want me to serve this person that runs all the time? I mean, these are the ways we introduce the people that we support, and when we're hiring people, how to work with anybody that's aggressive. Are you serious? I'm not coming to work there. And I think that we just think, well, that's just what we do, and we've got to do a better job of looking at those positive attributes.
Oh, I love that. You just identify just interview questions for new staff as a story. That's awesome. I've never thought of it that way, but that's really true. Sets the tone. And I think, Kenny, to your point, you were saying like, well, it's still just in the disability service world, but we are the conduits a lot of times for community. So if we're approaching this person from that mindset, when we go to the community, that's how we're going to introduce them as well. So it's important for us to shift we're the example, we're the filter, yeah.
And another thing we avoided was I think it was a great point, like he needs someone, if we were talking about a dating or meeting somebody new, he needs someone to respect his boundaries. I'm not sure that would be the very first thing I put on a dating profile of like, stay away from me.
Right.
But like a consistent person, a state person, like in the rest of his story, like when you go to his house, even if you get to the point where he'll invite you in, you have to go through the script. He wants you to sit in the same spot. He wants you to put your things in the same place. He wants you to, we're gonna check in on these same questions or things he's gonna show me before we can get to the improv part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And it's important for those things to be there, or you're not gonna get anything new.
And you're just talking about empathy.
Yeah.
They're like showing up for somebody with empathy of like, yeah, okay, this is what you need. Okay, cool. It's not a judgment yeah. Is there anywhere else that people are noticing like stories already showing up in your work and where this could be applied?
I talk too much, but I see, like, I've went from one county board to a new county board, and I'm coming in with kind of fresh legs on some people, and I see where plans, behavior, risks, all these things don't match what I see today. But a lot of those people that used to be those SSAs, used to be the people that work with them every day, are now in positions of power, and they won't let you forget those things that happened from before. And trying to move past those things is very difficult.
People's stories will follow them for years. Well, one time in high school, he did throw a chair in my
Yes.
One time in high school, my friend John lit a desk on fire.
Or
He's a professor. Things are fine. He's
Yeah.
grown up. We've moved on.
I was gonna say, I went to HRC one time with one of my guys and I was explaining him and the HRC chair was like, does he wear a helmet and his pants up real high with suspenders? And I'm like, which is funny that he still wears kind of similar outfit that he wore as a child. But I was like, yeah, and he was like, oh my God, this plan's approved. Because he remembered him 20 years ago at a school and how he destroyed this. And I'm like, whoa, like, let's back up. That's not even him anymore. Like, I'm coming here for way different purposes. But like, he didn't want to hear the whole story because he'd known him. He kind of what he was saying.
like, when you get to a point where like, hey, let's try this new thing, or let's do this more independently, let's let him be somewhere by himself. The story gets phrased as, you know what he did before, and are you considering like safety in these regards? Well, this hasn't happened for this many years. Well, he's had staff with him for this many years. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. His particular staff are not what's keeping him out of trouble. They are preventing him from having relationships. They are a hindrance to him, and he succeeded.
Right.
It's just someone, it's a shadow that follows them everywhere and watches their phone. Like, it's not, I'm trying to let people know, he's been successful. Like 24/7 supervision is never 24/7. Like he's successful in spite of those things.
Yeah, it's a new kind of institution, right?
Absolutely.
It just looks a little different.
We have to change the rhetoric though. I mean, that's the first thing that teachers do, is they literally look over the class list the moment it comes out on August 1st and they run to the year before to say, what kids did you have trouble with? What kids did you not? And so it's not, I mean, it's changing the logo or the lingo for everyone because we do change.
Yeah, this is not just for people with disabilities. These like stories that precede us are there always, like in the prison system and everywhere we look where people have files, case files that follow them. One of the things I keep thinking of is just documentation. What are the questions we're asking in documentation? We have to fill it out to get billing approved, right? Can we infuse some questions in there, like what people did they meet today? You know, what gifts did they share out when they were out today? Those questions, like in the interview, can really start to shape the way that people have to go back and read that in the case file. It'll be there. And I hate the idea of kind of turning person-centered planning into a document. It's not just that, but it does belong, I think, everywhere. It can be infused everywhere. It's not relegated to the documentation, but it can also live there too.
I think that documentation is really important because I know that when we talk about with people about the documentation, it's really hard for, I think, sometimes DSPs to recognize like what am I documenting and how does that meet the outcome? How's the outcome the story? And then how does this all kind of fit into that? Like what's the story we're telling in the documentation? And I just think that like if it were reversed, like if it were me and somebody was with me all day long and the only thing they could talk about is a check mark at the end of my day. That's it. That's all you get. Yes, we did this. And there's nothing more to what I brought to the world that day.
Yeah.
Well, that's the hard part about the documentation is when we're reading those things, like we're looking just as much for not what did that person do, but how did you help them? Like we're looking for different tactics that they've offered. Was it built on your relationship that you had with them, that you helped them through this time that they felt unsafe? Like, how can we lean on those things and recognize those as opposed to just how do we block better? How do we, whatever.
Yeah, I think leadership is a big part of this too, right? Because they set the tone for like, what outcomes are we tracking? What change are we trying to make? So if that trickles down from the top, it's a lot easier. So I know some people are working on the ground level and maybe butting heads with leadership. That just kind of happens. But when it can come from leadership and trickle down, that's like a dream team scenario. I would say, yeah.
No, go ahead, finish.
I would just say that, you know, with Jessica's story in particular, you know, she became really good friends with people at the temple. She had belonged to this temple as a kid, became kind of ostracized from it when her dad died. And then we started going back. All these people knew her and knew her for herself as a kid. And they loved her and were like, hey, handing out their number, like, let's get lunch. So it was kind of easy to connect her because her previous story was so sweet as a little kid. And eventually over the years, there was a time when Jessica's like nervousness in the crowd came out in front of these temple ladies and they got scared and they called me like, what was that? And I had to say, you know, sometimes if she feels like she's being ignored, because it's so loud in a room and people can't hear her, she really has a hard time. And that's all I said. And that was enough for them to be like, oh yeah, it was really crowded and it was really loud. No problem, we got it. Like that was scary. But so we assume too that like we're empathetic, right? Because we belong in the system, we work here, but it's not true. Like people in the community can sometimes be even more empathetic because they don't have all that crap weighing on them about, you know, their case files and things like that. They're just there for that one person and, you know, one little kind of event where she made them kind of scared was not the end of the world. They're still seeing her today. So if anything, it made her picture more full for them. So what were you gonna say then?
Well, you mentioned leadership and button heads with others. And it really bothers me because it's such obvious stuff, right? And you know, doing it for as long as I have, from the DSP's perspective to the intervention, et cetera, to training and teaching. Best practices for leadership, best practices for training, best practices for teaching. Start out with the positive expectation. You start out with encouraging them and you equip people, you build on their strengths and their skills. It's best practices all around. It's not science. It's proven over and over again everywhere. And we can't seem to implement it. To me, it blows my mind. I mean, we talk about it daily probably, you and I, and others.
Yeah.
But it's, and so at our leadership team level, we talk about it on a regular basis, and it's, I think that we're to the point now, where I think that it's very, very, it's in our target, it's like, how can we, throughout the whole organization, and that's our, we got a new superintendent. And so, how do we do that? And I think that we've got great planning and great strategies to do that, but we've also got 170 staff that have been here for years and years and years, or maybe 100, but the 170 have been here. So, they've been doing it the old way, the old system way, or however it's been done in the past. So it's a challenge, but I think you're right. It has to start at the top, or it'll never move anywhere.
Do you feel like this work has kind of changed you a little bit? That like maybe you looked at things a certain way and you've kind of opened your eyes to new stuff too, and like personally that you've grown through?
This work today?
Just like the stuff that you are talking about right now, wishing other people could see because it's so plain. Did you always know that? Or
Yeah, and I think it's a lifetime of being involved with people, whether the people with disabilities, or people that supervise, or people that supervise me, or, just wherever. It's just, wow, and you just start seeing all the things that line up. It's fascinating how, so it's pretty obvious, it's pretty basic, but it's not as obvious, I guess. Pam tells me all the time, it's not as obvious to everybody. So.
I think you let it work on you too. Like you let it change you. Right. And not everybody is willing to do that. And I don't know why, but I think there's like some personal work that goes into being able to share a story respectfully that maybe even reflects back, how do I think of myself? How do I think of my kids? How do I think of my family? It's a personal thing too. That's a whole other like training that I'd actually love to do that has like more to do with like mindfulness and awareness of like our own triggers and what's coming up emotionally for us with this person, that we can't seem to see them just for being a human. There's a lot there that I think we could talk about. And so I empathize with people who aren't there yet, because I think there's actually more going on that maybe it's just gonna take time and experience to see it, so.
Yeah, I think the leadership stuff I was pointing out was like, it's more about like, there's that secondary trauma of trying to work through like really intense stuff. And when you couldn't fix it, handing it off to the next person and you see that they're talking about looking at it a different way, it's almost like they almost take that personally, as in like, I couldn't fix it then, so how are they gonna try to do it now differently now? And that's dumb.
It is dumb and it's really hard. And also if you play the long game, eventually I think people will come around, because I've seen that happen with people like, they're like, you can't take her out in the community. You need to wear a badge. And I'm like, why do I need a badge? She's my friend. I was like so butting heads. And like now the agency that works with her is training you guys on stuff. So like, let's just say that like they've come a really long way, and people do. It just can take some sticking with it. So I think we have a couple minutes left here. Just want to close with.
I think everybody that shared here today kind of driving home the point that as storytellers, as staff, however we show up honoring people's stories and telling their stories, that we have the power to shift how others think, feel, and act. And that's been very relevant today on some of the things that we talked about. And then I think that this probably is an embarrassing anecdote, but I would challenge that it only starts from leadership. And when I started in 2007 as a day program worker, at the end of the day, when everybody got on Medicaid and Access Bus and their taxis, we would sit in the kitchen and we would just make fun of people at the end of the day. That's how we would relax. Did you see Joseph did this crazy ass thing? Oh my God, wasn't she insane? And we did that for a while, and it wasn't because leadership said we shouldn't, or we should. It was just that's how we processed, and we thought that those were the stories of these people with disabilities. Aren't they so ridiculous at the day program, and what a silly job we all have. When we stopped doing that, I think we shifted and said, well, what is this work actually about? Is it about baking cookies for firefighters and going to the museum? Or is it trying to get people purpose and meaning in their life? And I can't say that we never did say, oh my gosh, wasn't that hilarious? Because funny things do happen, and that is true. But we stopped doing it as, aren't they so ridiculous? And wasn't this something really interesting? Or did you see Michael did something really cool? Or did you notice that Des, didn't wear all the bracelets today? Like, that's where our story started to come. And I think that was in large part because Katie was brought on board around 2010 and said, well, what if the story was not silly, meaningless, purposeless, that left side list, and more, oh my gosh, friendly, she's a baker. He's a scientist, he's a computer genius. And so that was not documentation, that was not Medicaid, that was just culturally, how are we gonna interrupt that story? And can we start doing that as a team internally? And we kind of already talked about, there are lots of places you can do that, but I think sometimes it starts with ourselves and just in the person that we're independently supporting, and starting to shift how we think, act, and work with them as well.
So you guys have some homework if you'd like in that packet. I think one of the last couple of pages, there is a worksheet that you could bring to your next meeting, your next my plan, whatever. I would suggest everybody agree in the room that like, hey guys, I'm gonna be taking notes today a little bit on the language that we use. So we can try and shift our culture to be a little bit more positive and have a better filter. The worksheet is just a listening worksheet, a lot like how Candace was taking notes today. You'll just listen actively in the meeting that you're in, and then anytime you hear a word that's an attractor word about that person, write it down. Anytime you hear a word that's a repeller or a distractor word, write it down. And you can even take tally marks, like anytime you hear something that's really making that person feel like, yeah, they're just like me, they're human, tick the box. Anytime you feel like, that's making me feel a little bit like they're not like me, tick the box. And then at the end of it, you guys can have a little discussion like, how'd we do? What's our score, right? I like.
They're not gonna like it.
And also, like, I also say that if this isn't cool, like your team's just not there yet, go and try it on your own on a story that you find on the interwebs. You know, like pull up a video or a story that you read and just track it yourself. Just to kind of practice and build this muscle so that we start to use words and tell stories that are gonna shift the narrative, right? Thank you guys so much. If we have any time for questions, we're happy to stay. But here's our contact information if you wanna get in touch. You can call or text or email. And I'm just really grateful for everyone coming today and sharing all your beautiful stories and the work and passion you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did anybody have any questions or anything like that?
Questions? No? Just a couple things before we end. The next provider meeting will be May 24th, and we will have investing in resiliency and MUI updates. Also, for any of you in person who haven't signed in, please sign in so we can get you, county board staff, your certificates. Providers, if you don't have yours, Jamie has your certificates. Those of you on Zoom, if you have not submitted your email, please do so I can get that to you. And just a reminder that today's recording and handouts will be added to the Fairfield DD website, fairfielddd.com website, so you can get on that and pull that information anytime you'd like if you want to share that. So anybody have anything else? All right, thank you for coming, and hopefully we'll see you next month. Thank you, Katie and Candace.
Thank you, Pam, for inviting us.
Absolutely. How many people were on Zoom?
Oh, look at it, I wrote it down. So we had 21 on Zoom.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
That's more than I thought.
Yeah, 21 on Zoom, and we had 10 person. 21, yeah. Look, I know you're Zoom. This is what I do the whole time.
Have anybody from Perry on there?
So David,
Yeah.
no. Sorry, I'm thinking New York. David McManus, is that his name? Nobody from Perry. Oh, no, yeah.
I've been with several people.
Nobody from Perry, yeah, not this time, but.
Yep.
Do you know, would you know them if they?
Oh, their emails would pop up, right?
Yeah, their emails would, so, I mean, unless, most of them are, yeah, most of them are providers that I get their stuff. But.
Hey, thank you for coming though.
Yeah,
You
thanks
could
for
take that
coming.
worksheet back and see if anybody wants to play